leave some time for Q&A. So, I was actually born in Berkeley. My family and I moved to Cupertino when I was 6 years old. Went to Lincoln Elementary for elementary school. Growing up, I was not gonna lie, a bit of a rebellious kid. I think I had a rebellious streak that I still kind of carry with me today. I was really into skateboarding, guitar, punk rock, things like that, as well as I was really into computers. I remember having a MySpace page and having all this like custom HTML code in it. And I think I was just a tinkering with websites, tinkering with computers from a young age. I was always a really kind of a people person. I always loved people. I was very social, had a lot of different friends and different friend groups and things like that. I wouldn't consider myself a great student in high school. I was, as we all know, Monte Vista was a pretty academically competitive place. I think I was like above average. I was nothing special. It's funny, I was looking at my report cards from a few years ago, and it was always something along the lines of Arjun's a really smart kid, but really hyper, really fidgety, easily distracted, has trouble following directions. But what I did, that being said, I had really fond memories of my extracurricular activities at Monte Vista. I got a lot of enjoyment out of that, whether that was being on the varsity golf team, being part of the Monte Vista Jazz Ensemble where I played guitar. I think those things shaped me a lot, as well as obviously MVDECA. I still keep in touch with some of my friends from DECA in high school. I still keep in touch with a lot of my friends from DECA and have very fond memories from that. Overall, I think my college career was a bit of my kind of growing pains, as I would like to probably say. I think my belief that I had in Monte Vista was probably something along the lines of like, you either go to a top 20 college and you're successful in life, or you're not, right? Like that was, I think, the belief that was imprinted into me. And for various reasons, college was a bit of a bumpy ride for me. I was pretty good at math and science, and I was always interested in business as well as technology. But I was really confused as to what to do with that, right? Within that realm, there's so many options. You could be an investment banker for technology companies. You could go into consulting. You could go into technology consulting. You could go into law for tech or something like that, right? So I think I was just really overwhelmed with the amount of options that were available. And I just had trouble kind of finding my footing. And so I spent 2 years at UC Davis studying mechanical engineering with minor in business. I wasn't doing great there academically or socially. I actually took a year off I actually withdrew and took a year at De Anza. And it was funny, I remember having a conversation with my academic counselor. He was a ex-military guy, and he was kind of like, look, man, like, what are you doing? Like, you don't really like engineering, you're not particularly good at it. And he suggested I maybe take some classes in information systems and business. Ended up loving it. And I actually ended up transferring to Indiana University to study informatics with the minors in economics and entrepreneurship. Informatics was an amazing program. I have really enjoyed it. It's an interdisciplinary program that focuses broadly on how technology impacts other disciplines. And I was able to take all these amazing courses that I really enjoyed, whether that was web development, accounting, finance, public speaking, and communication. And I think maybe my internship experience might be kind of a testament to kind of how confused I was, right? Like I did an internship at a law firm, realized that it was pretty boring, a lot of clerical work. Then a few summers after that, I did a internship in manufacturing, where I was kind of on what they call operations management at the time. And even to today, I'm pretty interested in how to optimize processes and create efficient systems and things like that. But it was an interesting experience. But after that summer, I realized I didn't really want to work in manufacturing. And one of the summers, when I was at Indiana, actually, at the time, and still to today, I would argue that a lot of students end up going into investment banking. A lot of my kind of peer group and friends were doing that. It's kind of the cool, sexy thing to do. You wear a suit, you make great money. But at the same time, and so I was interested in pursuing that, but at the same time, I had no real qualifications, so to speak, right? But so here's, I think, a story that you might find interesting is that I actually ended up cold calling and cold emailing 200 investment banks on the West Coast, everywhere from San Diego and Seattle, asking for a summer internship. And that approach led to 2 offers. And I ended up taking one at J Moore Partners, which was a small technology-focused, software-focused investment bank in San Francisco. And for those of you that don't know, investment banks at a high level, what they do is they facilitate corporate transactions. So let's say company A wants to buy company B, an investment banker would help facilitate and broker that deal. Let's say company A wants to raise $100 million, investment bank would help that company go and raise that capital. But it was really interesting because that summer, when I was in investment banking, I ended up, part of the job is you're analyzing a lot of different companies. So I was analyzing all these companies in the software industry. And when I looked at these companies, this was 2013. So this was just when that whole shift to the cloud, as they were saying, applications were being delivered on the internet. And I was looking at these companies and they had 80% gross margins, predictable revenue, recurring revenue. So I was like, this investment banking thing is really cool, but I think where the excitement is happening is actually in these companies. And from there, I made the decision that I wanted to work in enterprise software after graduation. And for those of you that don't know, enterprise software is basically software that helps businesses run. So whether that's accounting and finance software for companies, sales and marketing software for companies, that's really where I wanted to be. And so that's, once I had made that firm decision, I was able to pursue that career in a career in that industry in a more focused way. I'll touch on this in a little bit, but I basically, after that summer, I got really specific and I told myself, I want to work at a high growth software company with a great culture, with a great training program in Austin, Texas. And it was one of those things where I think I was really fascinated with living in Austin at the time. And it was, once I had done that and gotten really specific about what I wanted, all these really interesting opportunities came to be. Once again, I applied to like a lot of different companies, ended up with basically two offers. And then I ended up joining this company, Netsuite, headquartered in the Bay Area, but offices everywhere, in what they call their professional services analyst development program. Quite a mouthful there. But basically, that role, what I was doing was, so NetSuite offers what they call an all-in-one business management solution. So NetSuite offers businesses this software tool that helps you manage accounting, your finances, your inventory, let's see what else, your marketing activities, your sales activities, all in one place. And we were, serving all sorts of different kind of verticals. So you could do healthcare, financial services, manufacturing was a big one, high tech was a big one. So it was really cool because, and as a professional services analyst, what you're doing is actually going to a client, a customer, and saying, hey, how do we tailor this software and make it work for your business? So I had a really good time doing that. NetSuite ended up getting bought by Oracle. And after almost 2 years there, I moved to the New York office. I transferred to the New York office at one point. But after 2 years, I decided, I'm ready for my next challenge. And on that note, I think if any of you do get the chance to live in New York, I highly recommend it. I've been in New York for, 3 years now. I think it's just, it's kind of I consider it the business capital of the nation. And it also, a lot of opportunities, career and personal, have come to me as a result of living in New York. So if any of you have the opportunity, I highly recommend it. And when I was in and it's one of those things on that note, when I had moved to New York and was with Oracle, I had met through mutual friends, someone who was a sales engineer at Salesforce. And, we got to talking and he was like, hey, and he was ex-Oracle as well. And he said, hey, you have an interesting background. Have you thought about a career at Salesforce? And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh my God, of course. He ended up helping me through the interview and coaching me through the process. Very grateful for that. Ended up becoming what they call a sales or solution engineer at Salesforce in the financial services group, which is a great fit for me because I always had an interest in financial services since that summer internship in investment banking. So it was a great fit. So sales engineers, what they do is throughout a sales cycle, when you're selling software, a sales engineer will be brought in to say, okay, here's a business challenge. How do we map that to our solutions? How do we paint the vision of how this could work for your business and ultimately help close the deal? So you're kind of like the technical and product specialist throughout the sales cycle. So, you have to be really knowledgeable. You're basically kind of what they call, in some sense, a knowledge expert. And then, after 2 years of doing that, I transitioned to an account executive role, which is your classic, in some sense, your classic quota carrying sales rep. It's a bit of a glorified title, where I'm managing a book of clients and helping them. Managing a book of clients is a lot of things, right? You're supporting any support, any issues that come up, any upsell, cross-sell opportunities, making sure that there's a contract in place that makes sense for both parties, as well as trying to hunt for new business as well on the side. So, I started that role in May of last year, which was kind of when COVID was starting to hit. So obviously some challenges there. A lot of businesses had tightened their budgets. A few of my customers were like struggling to stay in business, right? But I think towards the end of last year, we kind of turned the corner, and overall, I'm really enjoying it. Really happy with that. Really enjoy what I do so far. And on the side, my dad and I have started to work together a little bit. We actually both acquired a insurance technology company based out of Pennsylvania, and we're trying to modernize the company, modernize technology. Obviously, some challenges as it is an older company, but I'm pretty excited what the future holds for that. So that's something I do on the side, as well as I've still, fortunately through COVID, kind of get back into guitar, and I have a guitar Instagram page on the side if any of you guys want to check it out. So, I was thinking about what to say in terms of kind of advice and tips and helpful advice for students. What I realize is that I don't know if I necessarily like to give generalized advice. I think, each of us is pretty individual and has different strengths, interests. So some of it, just giving general advice might not be super relevant. But what I think might be helpful is if I give you advice that I would give to my younger self, right? So I think, first of all, I don't know about, at least for myself, I wasn't very self-aware growing up. I think I didn't have a great sense of who I was, what my strengths were, what I really wanted out of a career, what I wanted out of life, really. I think I was, in some sense, a creature of, our community, really. Like the Monte Vista experience shaped me a lot. And I think my parents, I think I was worried about the expectations and of others, and honestly what other people would think of me. But I read a good Mark Cuban, entrepreneur. He had a really good quote on this, and he says everyone has probably 2 or 3 things that they're really good at. I think each of you in this room, in this Zoom hangout, has probably 2 or 3 things that you're uniquely good at, better than others, competitively good at. And if you're able to focus and create a career around that, I think you'll find a lot of success. For me, I felt like, I was always really good at building relationships and communication. And so for me, a career in sales is software sales, as well as there, I think I always was kind of a problem solver. So for me, a career in software sales has been a really good fit. And I'm finding a lot of, success and fulfillment because of that. As well as, which actually parlays to the second point, is strength on strength. It's something that my dad told me when I was younger. When I was in professional services or kind of IT consulting, they're kind of the same thing. I remember my dad's was a sales executive for a while, and I told my dad, like, hey, I think I really get this consulting thing. I think I understand how the products work. I'm speaking to clients. Like, I want to go into sales. Like, I want to be like you. And then he was like, look, man, like, you're not ready. Like, quite frankly, like, I wouldn't hire you. And it was a really disheartening thing to hear from my own dad. But I think what he was saying is like, look, you need to go from a position of strength to a position of strength. And he used this example of when you're rock climbing, if you have a shaky foothold, it's hard for you to grab another strong kind of foothold. You need to go from a point of strength to another point of strength. And he said, look, man, why don't you go be a sales engineer, right? You have this technical background. As a sales engineer, you'll work with a bunch of different reps. You'll work with managers. You'll see how they talk. You'll see how they handle objections, and you'll see how they get deals done. And if you're a good sales engineer, then maybe someone will take a chance on you, and you can go into direct sales. And that's something that I've carried with me, that I think has been really helpful, of just like building solid foundations. There's an interview with Will Smith. I linked it in here, but he talks about building a wall. Like, when he was younger, his dad gave him this task of building a wall. And what he realized, he said something kind of on this note, is that when you go out to build a wall, you lay one brick at a time, right? You lay it really well. And then you lay a second brick on top of it. And then over time, you have a really strong wall. And that's something that that's just how I've kind of tried to approach life in my career, building solid foundations before rushing into things or doing things that you're not necessarily ready for. Third thing I would say is probably learn how to sell. I highly encourage all of you. It's something I wish I did when I was your age. I don't know what the environment is like at Monte Vista now, but I think getting a sales job in high school probably was maybe a bit frowned upon. But I think when I look at it, going into sales has been one of the larger, I would say probably one of the largest ROI things I've done for myself. It just changes how you communicate. It changes how you build relationships with people. It's changed how you kind of understand the world. Obviously, I'm a bit biased because I work in sales, and my dad also worked in sales for a long time. But what you'll start to realize is that every job at some level becomes a sales job, right? Whether that's if you're a managing partner at a law firm, you're not really doing legal work. You're actually bringing in new clients. That's a big part of the job. When you're a partner at a investment bank or partner at a consulting firm, you're not really doing consulting work. You're actually really bringing in clients. And I would also argue even the CEO's job is largely a sales job, right? You're always recruiting new talent. You're recruiting. You're selling people on the idea of a career at your company. You're selling investors and why they should invest in you. You're selling products and services overall. And it's funny, like I think, and it doesn't have to be like big corporate sales. Like I remember I was at the Verizon store when I was at home, that Verizon store right by Target. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what an amazing sales rep. Like he built so much value, built so much trust and credibility with me. I was very impressed. So that's something I wish I did when I was younger. If it makes sense for you, I highly recommend it to, learn to get a sales job in the community, face-to-face sales. I think your older self will thank you for it. And I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, but getting highly specific about what you want. I think anytime I've really accomplished something I wanted, I was highly specific about what I wanted. I think the NetSuite example was a good example. I was like, look, I want to work at a high growth software company with an amazing culture, with a great development program in Austin, Texas. I mean, there's probably only like 2 or 3 companies that even fit that criteria, but it ended up kind of manifesting itself, I think, as a result of me being highly specific. And I would argue the same thing with my investment banking internship experience. I was, just highly specific about what I wanted. I wanted to work for a technology-focused investment bank on the West Coast. And I think that approach has served me pretty well. And then moving on to the last one, define the expectation. This is something that I've I'm still kind of working on, but I think this perspective has helped me get a little bit more, help me stay a little more grounded, I think. Just defining the expectation, right? Like, what does kind of success look like to you? Is that freedom? Is that having an amazing family? Is that living in a certain city? Is that making a lot of money? I think just defining like what it's probably hard at your age, but like defining what is the end goal, right? Like, what does success look like? Is it $1 million? Is it $10 million? Is it $100 million? Is it having an amazing family? Like, I guess working backwards from what you want, I think will lead to a lot of success and or success on your terms, one, but also just fulfillment overall. And I think, and maybe it's a function of kind of where we grew up and stuff, but like, I think you'll be less affected by the need to compare yourself to your peers, and also lead to happiness. So that being said, happy to open up the floor for Q&A.
All right, thank you for that, Arjun. I really liked the last slide especially. But yeah, let's go to our first question. So the first one is, what aspect about Salesforce do you most focus on? And can you describe how Salesforce differentiates itself through that attribute?
Okay. So when you say focus on, I guess maybe that'd probably be my day-to-day job. So like I said, I'm an account executive that focuses in the financial services group in the Northeast. So for me, like I mentioned, as an account executive, you're basically managing a client is really what it is. And managing a client has a few different aspects to that. It's ultimately about keeping a customer healthy and happy, right? Making sure that there's a contract in place that makes sense, making sure that they have the right products and solutions that they need, or you think might be a good fit, as well as, I'm trying to think what else. It's also maybe aligning the right resources, right? So let's say a customer is having a trouble, or one of my Salesforce is a very broad platform, and I'll get into that in a second. But let's say a customer has some needs around data analytics and intelligence. Well, maybe I loop in a Tableau or a data analytics specialist to have a conversation with the right person, right? So there's a bit of a resource allocation, but it's also, at the end of the day, it is a sales job, so you have to get deals done. So I think a good account executive is able to challenge a customer and help them think differently, and bring insightful ideas to the table of what kind of technology they could be leveraging. On the second note, how do we help? So given that I work in financial services in New York, we work with anything broadly in financial services. So that could be insurance companies, to wealth management companies, banks, credit unions. Banks and credit unions are going through a pretty big digital transformation. So they're trying to find ways to differentiate and innovate with customers, like you, that are coming into the workforce, going into college, need to open up bank accounts. How do they differentiate themselves from all the digital banks and Robinhoods and Wealthfronts of the world? That's one aspect. How does Salesforce help, I believe was the second part of that question. Generally, Salesforce at a very high level, we provide a software platform that helps people find new business, win more business with existing customers, and then service existing customers once they've been onboarded. So, for that bank example, how do we bring more people into the bank using marketing technology? How do we win more business with an existing client, maybe like yourself? You have a checking account. How do we help upsell you to a savings account? And then service, once you have all these accounts, you say, hey, I got locked out of my account. How do we make sure that you are being serviced and your needs are met? So that's what I would say to that.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question that one of our members had was, you mentioned having a couple of summer internships as a college student, and they wanted to know if you could share your experience a little more about working as an intern, and if you had any advice for reaching out and applying for internships.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's like almost more competitive than I was there, but honestly, I don't know how else to say it. Like I just hustled. Like I cold and cold emailed as many people as possible, and that worked. And people like really liked the initiative. I remember someone saying like, look, you know, I love the initiative. You know, so I would say I treated it. I remember I like had an Excel spreadsheet um, of basically, you know, everyone who I think would be a good, everyone who I should reach out to for that investment banking summer internship. I did something similar for the manufacturing, or the manufacturing internship was kind of a family friend. Um, and I remember applying online to a bunch of places. I think for you, I think what I would do if I were in one of your shoes, leverage your network, one, leverage DECA, right? I think Monte Vista DECA alumni are a pretty impressive bunch. I'm sure if you reached out to some, they'd be more than willing to, you know, everyone loves hungry, driven people, and everyone needs those kind of people at companies. So um, I think reaching out to DEC alumni would be totally appropriate. I'm trying to think what else, and just cold calling, cold emailing, LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn. I don't think was LinkedIn was not really around when I was your age. Leveraging LinkedIn, and applying. You know, applying online, using LinkedIn or job postings to find summer internships.
All right, thanks. Another thing that we wanted to ask you was, what do you think is a aspect of the finance industry in general that a lot of entry-level workers or people coming into the finance industry don't really know about?
Ooh, I mean, it's hard for me to say because I work more in technology than finance. But I would say, given that I'm in New York, I have a lot of friends in financial services, and I sell to that industry. I would say, that's a good question. I mean, the hours are, I don't know. I don't want to sound bad, but like the hours can be pretty grueling, right? In some of these banking jobs, you have a lot of ambitious people that went to great colleges, you know, competing for these jobs. The I would also say sometimes I don't want to put a negative light on it. I would say that sometimes I didn't find the work that interesting. I definitely don't want you to dissuade you, because I think some of you might find it interesting. I personally just didn't find the work that interesting as technology, but that's what I'd probably say to that. The hours can be pretty grueling, and the work can be a bit dry. That probably wasn't the most positive answer, but that's what came to mind.
All right, thank you for that insight. The next question we had was, what were the biggest factors that led you to choose financial services and technologies industries for your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I mentioned, I think I saw the opportunity in enterprise software, right? When I think some of it was fate because I had that internship, but just seeing the opportunity that, hey, these companies are really great companies fundamentally in terms of their financials, as well as this industry is going through a huge shift. I wanted to be a part of it. As for financial services, I really liked, I don't know. That's a good question. From a young age, I think it was honestly honestly the business classes that I took in high school. I think it just like econ and the ideas of interest rates, the ideas of stock investing and bond investing. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you, but I've had an interest in financial services probably since high school, college, and some of that I think was part of DECA, to be honest with you, of just taking all these cool classes and taking econ classes in college and just enjoying it.
All right, that's cool to hear. So all the new 8th graders, remember that DECA will help you with the rest of your career. Okay?
It will. No joke.
Yeah, for sure. So the next question is, how would you rate the importance of soft versus technical skills in career progression?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think I like to think I've had a little bit of both. I mean, I think it depends. I think, and I don't know if I can speak broadly, but let me put it this way. I'm really glad that I picked up technical skills working in technology. I think if you're going to work in technology, you should learn how to code. It's not that difficult. You guys are all smart. I'm sure you can do it. I think I can't really speak for other industries, but I would say if you're going to work in technology, learn how to code, learn how to program, because even though I do sales, which is traditionally probably a non-technical role, I'm so differentiated as a sales rep, having learned how to code, having been in IT consulting, having been a sales engineer, because I can just have more valuable and credible conversations with customers. And ultimately, I would say sales, and in some sense business, is about having trust and credibility with people. And the more trust and credibility you can build with people, I think the more successful you'll find. So I would say it probably depends on the industry, but if you're going to work in tech, I would highly recommend that you learn how to code, or learn how to be, or pick up as many technical skills as possible.
Thank you for that. Another question that one of our members had is, what is the hardest obstacle that you've had to overcome to get to where you are in your career right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I feel like I don't get that question much, but I would say probably just my college career. Like, it was, those were pretty trying times for me. I like switched my major 3 or 4 times. I felt like I had let down some of my family. I was maybe a bit embarrassed at some point, because I was just facing, it just seemed like, it just felt like almost a bad phase or something, where I was just everything seemed to be going wrong, for as much as I hate to say it. But so that was a pretty trying time for me, but I think it was one of those things that ultimately you come across the other side and become better as a person because of it. I feel like it gave me more resilience, humility, empathy, and things like that. Yeah, so I'd say probably my college career was a bit rocky, and I had to fight extra hard, and face some adversities there.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, like another question would be, if you were to go back to your college self or high school self, is there any specific advice that you think you'd tell yourself that would really benefit you?
Yeah, I think it's probably what I just went over. Let's see. Probably what I just went over. Let me see if I can. It would probably be these 5. I think for me, if I had to pick one, it would probably be just being self-aware. I don't think I was a very self-aware person growing up. And then what I mean by I think people have different definitions of self-aware. For me, just understanding like who I was, what my strengths are, what was blocking me from achieving my goals. What else? And just understanding that, like, we're each, I think each individuals, we're each really unique and each have unique gifts and strengths to bring to the table.
Thank you for that. Another question was, is there someone or something that you look up to for motivation or inspiration?
Yeah, good question. I think my dad would probably be the easy answer. My dad has always been my role model, hero, classic kind of Indian immigrant story. Came to the country with nothing and made something of himself, kind of lived the American dream, as I like to think. That would probably be the easy answer. There are some other business leaders that I look up to. Mark Benioff, our Salesforce CEO. For those of you who don't know, I highly recommend looking him up. What's inspiring to me about him is that he's created this like paradigm of using business as a platform for change and good, which I think was really inspirational and really drew me to the company initially. Who else? I mean, people in different disciplines too. Like John Mayer is a guitarist I've always really liked. He's in some sense an inspiration to me as a guitarist. I'm trying to think what else. Other business leaders, maybe like Robert Smith. He's doing a lot for the African American. He's a really successful African-American investor doing a lot for African-Americans overall, really inspirational. Chamath Palihapitiya, those of you may know him, another investor, or was a technology executive and investor now, who I looked up to for just being contrarian and being able to speak his mind. So those are a few that come to mind.
All right, that's really cool. Another question is, what do you do to continue your education while working in the industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. So a few different things. I think I'm a bit fortunate that Salesforce brings a lot of opportunities. I took this class through Harvard Business School last year, which was super cool. I'm part of our Toastmasters club at Salesforce. For those of you who aren't familiar, Toastmasters is basically a public speaking forum for people who are looking to improve their public speaking skills. I've learned a lot, or I think I've improved my public speaking a lot through that. I'm trying to think what else. I've been kind of in the process of applying or studying for grad schools. So like that's something that helps me keep my mind sharp. Applying or studying for the GRE, studying for the GMAT. That obviously helps. Overall, just like read. I read quite a bit. So for me, for a while, it was reading a lot on the industry of software. That's something that earlier on I was doing. For a while, it was reading up on sales when I was just getting into sales. And sales, there's so much literature around that. And these days it's more like reading about current events and reading about, I guess health and fitness is kind of what I'm reading about these days. So yeah.
Hi, Arjun. I have two questions. The
Yeah.
first one, are you going back to school to get your MBA, or is it a master's in a different subject? And then number two, what are your top books or book recommendations you recommend, especially for like young adults?
Ooh, that's a really good one. So I would say, so to answer the first one, I'm actually applying for like a dual degree program in MBA and a master's in information systems.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, so I'm looking at a few programs that offer both. But also for books, so many, but I think for me, one that was really transformative was Principles by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is a hedge fund, one of the most successful hedge fund managers of all time. And he talks about how he lives and approaches life with a series of principles, because life can be it can have its ups and downs, right? So having a set of principles that helps you guide yourself through life can be very beneficial. So there's so many to name, but I think Principles is really good. How to Win Friends and Influence People, really good. Think and Grow Rich is a pretty good one. Napoleon Hill. For those, the Chris Voss one, what is that called? Oh, how to negotiate as well as if your life depended on it. That's a really good book on negotiation and ultimately about like tactical empathy, what they talk about, of being strategically empathetic.
Thank you for that insight. The next one is, how have your experiences differed working at different companies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it's a bit different for me, given how my experiences differed at different companies. Well, I've also had really different roles at different companies. I think NetSuite was a pretty high growth, innovative company. I read really smart people at NetSuite. A lot of whom have like gone on to like start their own companies and stuff like that. And trying to think, it was a different role because I was more in consulting than sales. So I would say I was meeting really intelligent people, and we were solving really interesting problems at NetSuite. Of how to manage all this information for a business. At Salesforce, I met really driven people. I met real, I was spending time with more and working with more sales type people. I just met really driven, polished, um, people who just like really like to win. I don't know how else to put it. Like a lot of the people I work with are just really driven and ambitious and competitive um at what they do. So that's what I would say Salesforce probably had a stronger culture too. It's a very values-based culture. You know, it's a very values-driven organization, whether that's in, like was encouraging people to volunteer. That's a big part of it. It's also like a really fast moving company. We're always really seeing new products, always trying to stay at the cutting edge of technology.
All right, thank you for that. Our next question is, you learn a lot of skills through life and through school. So can you talk about one skill that you think is the most important that you learned through school that might be more technical? And then another skill that you learn through just experience in life.
Ooh, that's a tough one, and I think I have an interesting answer to that. When I was at Indiana, I took a Excel, basically an Excel modeling class through the business school, and it was just such a good class, and I feel like it taught me Excel in and out. So most people wouldn't think so, but in sales, I actually use Excel a lot in terms of putting together pricing proposals and you know showing how certain things can be costs. Costs can save you a lot of money, or it can produce a lot of ROI. So I actually use Excel a lot more at my day to day at my day job than I thought I would. So I would say learning Excel was, especially in the business world, if you know Excel, I think that you'll, in terms of a technical skill, you'll go, you'll just benefit a lot. Also, just thinking in terms of like modeling things, I think is something that I've learned from my dad a lot, of just like even your monthly budget as a student or as a college student or a young professional, like model it out. Like how much are you spending on what? What's your income? What are your expenses? I think even when I analyze, like I was looking at real estate opportunities, when I just learning how to model something out, I think is, I think that's a good approach to investing, to life, to managing money, things like that. Sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Just like things you learn in school and then things you can't learn in school.
Oh, outside of school. I think learning, I don't know, this might be a little bit cliche, but learning how to listen, I think just learning how to be a good listener will help you in your relationships, your personal relationships, in your business relationships, in your friendships. Learning how to be a good listener. And it comes back to that book I talked to you about, is on negotiation, negotiating as if your life depends on it. Basically what he talks about is this whole concept of tactical empathy. And what he really meant is that he said one of the core needs of people is to feel like they've been heard, basically seen, heard, understood. So if you're able to show that to a customer, if you're able to show that to your girlfriend, boyfriend, if you're able to show that to your parent, if you're able to show that your friend, that you're like really listening and you really get what they're saying, I guess on that note, basically what he says is that you know that what does he basically say? Like when you get someone to say that's right. So let's, for example, if I say, oh yeah, it sounds like you've had a really bad day, and it sounds like, you had a big confrontation with your boss, and then my girlfriend says that's right. That shows that she knows I was listening. So I think I didn't explain that great, but basically, if you're able to show someone that you were listening and that they were heard and understood, that's highly impactful. That's what I would say to that.
I had a quick question as well. Are there any emerging fields that you're really interested in learning about or interested in going into? Yeah,
that's a good question, because I feel like it's come up pretty recently that I've been starting to become more interested in like Bitcoin and blockchain. That's probably a cliche answer because it seems like everyone's into that now. But I was skeptical about Bitcoin for a little bit. I'm starting to understand it better. And I think there's a lot of implications for financial services, for insurance technology, as well as blockchain technology, of how it can create trusted contracts, as well as eliminate the need for middlemen in certain situations. And so that's something that I'm reading about and learning more about. And that's probably a cliche answer, but.
Thank you, though.
Yeah.
And one of our members wanted to know, what would you say is the most valuable skill DECA has taught you, or lesson that you've learned?
Yeah, I mean, so many, honestly. Like, first of all, I think the DECA experience is really special and unique. Like, when I meet people in business today, or even people in college, not a lot of them had like a world-class business education in high school. It's actually like really unique. So I think, you guys should all consider yourself very fortunate to have the DECA opportunity. I would say just developing business concepts was highly important, right? Like just like learning marketing concepts, learning money and banking concepts, learning economic concepts in high school, highly beneficial. But also learning, I think, how to present, right? Like when you're presenting to an audience, to a judge, it's pretty nerve-wracking, right? And it's not necessarily, from what I remember, it wasn't necessarily easy material. You have to, I think it builds a lot of confidence in terms of just public speaking and presenting, and sounding credible and sounding confident. And obviously a lot of benefits to that. That's pretty much my job day to day. So yeah, so I would say that learning the business concepts and learning how to present yourself.
Hi, Arjun. This is kind of a random question, but going off of your answer from before, out of all the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, Chainlink, what is your favorite?
I would say I haven't looked into a lot of them. For me, probably Bitcoin, just because I understand the technology aspect a little bit. And I've only really researched Bitcoin, to be honest with you. So I would just say Bitcoin, for lack of a better answer.
All right, now we're gonna ask, do you recommend us invest in it? No, I'm just kidding, I'm kidding. All right, the real question is, what do you believe was a big turning point in your career, whether it was from high school or it was in college or even beyond that?
Yeah, so I think for me, a big turning point was really that summer of 2013, where I interned at an investment bank. For me, I had like faced a lot of kind of challenges and growing pains, like I said, in college. But then that summer made me really realize like what I wanted to do. So I felt really energized and inspired by that, because I felt like I'd found my thing.
Thank you for that. Another question that we had is, what qualities would you label as integral for someone who's looking to work in your field?
Ooh, that's a good question. So my field could be defined, I guess, as sales or software, but I would say sales itself, like I mentioned, being able to create trusted, credible relationships, just building trust with people. Like, for example, I remember like even last week, there was some confusions and I'd sold someone the wrong product, and I was like really scared about it because I was like, well, like I sold them the wrong product. But I had built so much trust and credibility with them that they were like, look, it's like, man, it's not a big deal. Like, let's just swap it out, etc. So I think building trust and credibility with people, it's hard to define how you do that, but I think just having integrity, having honesty, being sharp, right? Being professional, always help. As for software, I think it really helps if you like, I don't even know if I want to say technical, but you should understand how certain technologies work, right? I don't know if that I think technical is a bit of a scale, but I think you should fundamentally understand like what the product, how it works, and how people are getting value from it, and why they're getting value from it. I would say that for working in software technology.
All right, thanks. And since we are almost out of time, I want to top it off with this last question. And it is, what is your favorite DECA memory?
Ooh, that's a really good one. Honestly, what it probably was is we had this DECA fashion show, and it was pretty cool. It wasn't even like to be honest with you, we had like partnered, there was like a DECA fashion show where we had partnered with some fashion brands or something. It was at the Cypress Hotel in Cupertino, which I don't even think is there anymore. But it was just really fun. Like we got to stay at a hotel and we were like trying on all these different clothes. And I was there with like two of my really good friends who I'm still good friends with today. It was just fun. It wasn't even really a competition from what I remember. It was more of like a fun event, but you know, I still have very fond memories of that.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, Arjun. We all learned a lot, and this was very, very insightful. With that said, members, you're free to go. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. And yeah, thank you.